When it comes to the Hokages of Konoha, everyone has their favorite Hokage, and 9,000 different creators have made videos dissecting the Hokages as characters or talking about how strong the various Hokages are. So just like with the True Power series on the Hokages, where I went the opposite route of doing numbers and equations and number crunching in order to determine power, but instead I focused on the skill set and the diversity of each ninja as a way to paint a picture of how deadly the 7 Hokages are, as well as all the other characters I did in the various True Power playlists. I want to do something similar when it comes to this new series on the channel, which is the Hokage Legacy. Now, instead of doing the basic character breakdown or even a dissection like I do on my Path of the Tyrant videos, where I look at the Path of the Tyrant according to the information we have from Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero's Journey, I want to approach this new series in a different way and look at the legacies of each of the 7 Hokages, and I want to start in order with the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, who in my opinion is probably the most important Hokage ever, as well as you could argue one of the most misunderstood Hokage. Now, being born in the Warring States era, battle was a normal way of life for Hashirama. It was as normal as breathing. Yet, even as a child who had lost siblings to the chaos of the Warring States era, Hashirama still kept his eyes focused on the future. He didn't know how he would do it, but he knew that he would create a safe place for children who could grow up in a nurturing way, not being fully burdened by the chaos that he himself been forced to endure as a child, seeking peace through finding common ground by uniting the various clans together, getting them to realize that their clan pride can still be held onto, while also believing in something bigger than just their clan goals, believing in something bigger than themselves as people, and that something would be the ninja village that he would establish with his rival Madara Uchiha, the village that we know to be Konoha. Hashirama would put his money where his mouth was when it came to creating the Hidden Leaf village. Hashirama would be the one who would be credited with creating the infrastructure of the village by using his wood release jutsu. Part of his legacy as Hokage was the fact that he was selfless and that Hashirama was a man of sacrifice. Even though he was acknowledged as the leader of the village by many, including the feudal lord, Hashirama still wanted Madara to become the Hokage, which was another selfless act of sacrifice. Hashirama could have taken the mantle of Hokage right away. Everything was lined up for him, but he wanted to fill the void that was in Madara's heart. It can be argued that he was making a calculated decision to further mend the fences with the Uchiha clan and further cement the peace in the village by having a show of good faith to his rival by making him the very first Hokage of this brand new village. Eventually in time, Hashirama, if he would have been given his way, would have become the second Hokage, taking the mantle after Madara. And for those of you guys who are interested in an alternate reality where Madara never becomes evil and Hashirama does just this, makes Madara the first Hokage, I have a video titled What If Madara Never Became Evil, which I highly recommend watching. Now, when you look at the Hashirama and Madara dynamic, what Hashirama did there is a fitting gesture of beauty that I think sometimes gets lost on fans. Madara as a child stated that he did not believe in allowing people to stand at his back. Now, some of that was obviously survival, since the Warring States era, where Madara grew up, saw his brothers and clansmen being killed several times over. It was also an era where trust wasn't easily forged when it comes to outsiders, yet the very same village that Madara would found with Hashirama would be something that was different. While the world around them was still warped in chaos, Hashirama and Madara would be the very first ones to begin the process of ending that cycle of chaos. Hashirama was the one who was truly deserving of being Hokage. The people acknowledged him, the feudal lord acknowledged him, and yet Hashirama still sacrificed all that in order to try and make Madara the first Hokage. By accepting the mantle of Hokage, if it was indeed given to Madara like Hashirama wanted, we would have seen Hashirama standing behind Madara, supporting him both as an advisor and as the one who would go on to become the second Hokage, all because Hashirama was willing to make a sacrifice that would ultimately be acknowledged by Madara, because Hashirama would be standing at his back, making Hashirama the first person symbolically that Madara would allow to stand behind him. Now, the legacy of Hashirama is further built upon the foundation of sacrifice by the fact that he would be forced to face his former friend Madara in battle, with Madara attempting to keep his promise to end the failed experiment that was known as the ninja village of Konoha. In the end, Hashirama would have to sacrifice his love for his friend Madara in order to protect the village that they had both founded. However, there's another another sacrifice that was made in this moment that some fans overlooked. Madara himself noted that Hashirama had changed from the person that he was when they were friends in their younger years. Hashirama had sacrificed a part of himself, a part of his soul, in order to ensure that the young tree buds that would be the next generation would indeed begin to blossom. His legacy as Hokage would be further built upon sacrifice when you take Kushina Uzumaki's words into account around chapter 500 of the Naruto manga, which is the fact that Hashirama's own wife became the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi after lending her power to aid Hashirama. Though he would be able to help Tobirama train Hiruzen and raise a child and even help raise his granddaughter Tsunade, Hashirama would be forced to make yet another sacrifice as Hokage. War had begun to break out between the ninja villages, and smaller nations like the Hidden Waterfall village even tried to assassinate Hashirama, which I covered in my video on Kakuzu's tragic origin story, which I recommend checking out if you're a fan of Kakuzu. But Hashirama, who by this point had already collected several biju, was prepared to make yet another sacrifice as well. Hashirama had been willing to make several concessions to end the fighting between nations, including giving away the biju that Hashirama was in possession of as a way to balance out the power between nations, something that his brother Tobirama was staunchly objecting to. Hashirama was willing to sacrifice the strength of his own village and strengthening the villages of his enemies, all in the hope of one day uniting future generations and hoping that they will be able to find understanding and peace between one another without actually having to go through and clash kunai with one another. Ultimately, Hashirama would die during the First Great Ninja War due to unknown natural causes, and on his deathbed, a man who had sacrificed so much in the name of peace and in the name of the next generation in the hope that he placed in the next generation, Hashirama was left with only a fleeting hope that his successor as Hokage will honor his wishes to never mistreat the Uchiha so as to maintain Hashirama's dream of unity between clans in Konoha and letting the bloodshed of the past stay in the past where it belonged. That line of thinking was in a way part of his will of fire, and there would be some who in the future generations would adopt his line of thinking. In a way, when you really think about it, it's really fitting for a man who gave up so much for others to have his will of fire passed down to future generations, and the irony is that it was an Uchiha who is most like him when you think about it. What Sasuke meant as an insult that Itachi and Uchiha, the sworn enemy of the Senju, had been the one who had most likely inherited Hashirama's will of fire, Hashirama never took that as an insult, but instead, when you look at everything that surrounds Hashirama's legacy as Hokage, Hashirama being told that an Uchiha so much loved the village and the future of the village that he was willing to sacrifice his own clan for the sake of the village itself, much in the same way that Hashirama said that he would even sacrifice his own child if it meant being able to protect the village. Somewhere on the inside, Hashirama was probably smiling, knowing that everything that he had sacrificed up to this point, from his friendship with Madara all the way down to his own life towards his final days when he was alive, Hashirama's sacrifice had paid off. However, that's gonna be it for this first installment of the Hokage legacy. Up next, I'll be looking at the legacy of the second Hokage, and I think it's gonna be one that's gonna be pretty interesting to look at, especially given the many misconceptions that surround Tobirama as Hokage. Some of them are actually true, but others are blown way out of proportion. So let me know what you guys most remember Hashirama for. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.